Good morning, everyone. I've been asked to play Holy Now by Peter Mayer. This is a song that I have done here, I don't know how many times, enough for it to feel like a kind of a, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the word would be. Yeah. When I was a boy, each week, Sunday we would go to church, pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word, consecrate the holy bread. Everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. I remember feeling sad, miracles don't happen still. Now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Why? Water is not so small. Even better magic trick. Anything here at all. So challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, finding where there isn't one. When holy water was red at best, I barely wet my fingertips. Now I gotta hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. Used to be a world half there, heaven second rate, hand me down when I'm walking with a reverent air. Everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Read, question in child's face. Say it's not a testament. That'd be very hard to say. See another new month come. Say it's not a sacrament. Tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush, singing like a scripture verse. Made me wanna bow my head. Heaven's second rate, hand me down. How things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. Used to be a world half there, heaven's second rate, hand me down, walking with a reverent air. Everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Thanks.
David, thank you very much. That was beautiful. Come, come, whoever you are. We are all and each of us welcome here. You are welcome here regardless of your age, your size, the color of your skin, the color of your hair, the color of your eyes, and so am I. No matter your gender, whom you love, how you speak, whatever your abilities, we are all welcome here. Once I was a stranger here, and I found a deep welcome. My heart was glad. Each Sunday now it is renewed again and again. You are welcome with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes. Whatever stories have followed you here, you're welcome. Whether you believe in God all of the time, some of the time, or none of the time, you are all welcome here. No exceptions. Together we are a community of open minds, loving hearts, and willing hands. Good morning and welcome to South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. My name is Cortney Bouldin. My pronouns are he and him, and I am a tall person with what could best be described as a monochromatic floral shirt on. And I'd like to welcome you. It's my pleasure to be the worship associate today. So we have a few announcements before we get started, and I think there's a board member that's going to come up and talk about the auction and Board Connect and the potluck. Oh, there, Tom. Perfect. Thank you, Tom.
We didn't coordinate very well. Were you going to do it, Brandon? Here I am, right? So the first thing I want to do is make sure you're all invited to our potluck. We're having a potluck after the service today, so please join us downstairs. Thanks to those who've brought food. The board is hosting the potluck. This is something that we're starting up where once a month, a different committee or organization within SVUUS will be hosting the potluck. So look forward to that in other months where other parts where you may have your chance to be hosting the potluck, or you'll get a chance to learn about one of the committees that is hosting the potluck. Also, next week, we're going to be having our Board Connect, where we're going to be kind of the same thing downstairs after the service. We're going to be talking about some of the priorities that we're working on as a board. So look forward to that next week.
So we're going to take a moment to fully arrive and welcome one another. But first, we're going to turn and greet our vibrant virtual community. So let's find the camera. Oh, it's up. Hello. So you're welcome to stand and greet your neighbors.
So fantastic to have all this good energy in here with all of you. On November 9th, we are having one of our big social events of the year. And who has been to the auction and loved it? Yay! Okay, so we will be talking to you about that all this month as we prepare for November 9th. You can be thinking about, if you would like to, you don't have to, if you would like to dress as an icon of music. And so this might be Cher, or I don't know, David Bowie, or, like how far out do you want to go? Kiss? So up to you, or just come in your jeans, we don't care. But if you want to go for it, it's a fun thing to do. And please think about what you can donate, because we are raising this money together for our beloved community, and it all depends on each of us giving what we can, and then bidding on what we can. So you'll hear more through the month. Thank you.
Number 1031, please.
Stand if you're, what's the phrase, willing and able.
Stand if you're willing and able in body, mind, and spirit.
So I have a poem to share. You can sit for a minute. I have a poem to share. So this poem is called Adam and Eve, and it was written by Marjorie Pickthall. You'll recognize that it's a religious story, but maybe a kind of a different take on a religious story. When the first dark had fallen around them, and the leaves were weary of praise, in the clear silence, beauty found them and shewed them all her ways. In the high noon of the heavenly garden, where the angels sunned with the birds, beauty, before their hearts could harden, had taught them heavenly words. When they fled in the burning weather, and nothing dawned but a dream, beauty fasted their hands together and cooled them at her stream. And when day wearied and night grew stronger, and they slept as the beautiful must, then she bided a little longer and blossomed from their dust. I have a chalice lighter. If Caroline could come forward, we'll light the chalice together. Caroline? Ah, there you are. So we're going to light the chalice. Those at home are invited to light a chalice and share in this ritual by entering "Chalice is lit" and the name of your street in the chat box on Zoom. Please join me in repeating our chalice lighting words and use our actions if you wish. We light this chalice with the warmth of love. Thank you very much. So it's the first Sunday of the month, which means it's time for birthday blessings. If you have a birthday in October, please come forward.
Okay, my beloved birthday, all of my October birthdays. Receive this blessing now on behalf of our congregation. May this coming year be one of beautiful unfolding in your life. May there be challenging times that are surrounded with the love and care of family and friends. May you be delighted on your walks through nature. And may you grow ever more rooted and true to who you really and fully are. The world is a better place because you were born, and we are so glad you are here. And now I have a birthday sticker for each of you.
RE programs will meet downstairs, and so we can sing the children downstairs. Part of our ministry at South Valley includes sharing our Sunday worship offerings with a charitable organization that aligns with our principles and values. The next 2 months, we will be sharing our offerings with Rose Park Neighborhood Center. This is a center that supports refugees, so it's important work. Please join me in reading our offertory words. They are printed in your order of service, and I think they're written up here. We are the church. We are his hands, his heart, his voice. Together we share the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts. I'll invite the ushers to come forward, and we'll now accept the offering. For those at home, you're invited to use the giving link in the online order of service.
Can you bring me the offering? Okay, sorry. Thank you. Let's pass it around again. I'm just like an old-time preacher. It's not enough full. For all we have found the courage to give, let us be truly grateful. May these gifts be a blessing on our ministry within these walls and beyond as we share with the Rose Park Neighborhood Center. I'm going to invite us just to extend this time of silence for a moment of prayer and meditation and reflection. And by the way, if this is your first time, I am the Reverend Lora Young. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a tall, red-haired woman with a bright yellow side with love sash and a fantastic black and white coat. So in this community, we open our prayers like this. As a silent offering, a quieting of the spirit, a stilling of the mind. Spirit of life, you breathe in every part of this world, from the hills and the mountains to the rocks and streams, down to those of us dwelling here in this beautiful dryland desert. Spirit, we look and see you surrounding all of us, holding us in your deep and abiding peace. Spirit, we come to you this morning again, as always, with a heart broken open for the deep suffering that is in this world. The suffering that is experienced within these walls and in this community is certainly on our hearts and minds this morning, as is our attention and our sense of despair for what is happening worlds away, it seems. We cry out in lamentation, Spirit, for what is continuing to unfold in Gaza and in Palestine and spreading in the region of the Middle East. And we make a cry and a lamentation, please, will there ever be peace? Spirit, and fill us with the courage and the resilience to stand strong in a place of love, perseverance, ethical grounding, so that we can support the work that will bring about some sort of resolution and ability to move forward, even if now it feels impossible. And still that in our spirit, Lord and God and Goddess and breath of life, so that it extends across the entire planet to all those places that are in despair. Help us to do our parts here in this community to weave the tapestry of life ever more whole with our love. May it be so. Just to lighten that up, I'm going to let you know I have my special mug this morning. It reads, "Be careful, or you will end up in my sermon." So Court and I are going to share the sermon this morning. We are in the middle of the series this fall called Reclaiming, looking at what is the goodness that we can reclaim from those things that seem to be lost to us. And this week, we thought it would be a good time to talk about reclaiming those stories, those foundational myths that often undergird and support our daily living. Every culture has a creation story, and every culture is different. What creation stories have in common is a sense of who humanity is, how we got to be here, and what is the nature of the human condition. Now, most of us in this congregation, as we live here in North America, are quite familiar with the master stories that undergird this culture, the ones in Genesis, the Hebrew Bible. What some of us are also familiar with is that the Genesis stories, and there are two, are not the oldest nor the first creation stories in the Hebrew text. There are others in the Psalms, and some of those ones in the Psalms include monsters. In addition to that, the long history of Midrash in the Hebrew tradition, the Jewish tradition, which is the expansion and interpretation and the discovery of new stories within existing stories and at their margins, has resulted in thousands of creation stories emerging from that tradition. There are so many stories that have arisen from that text. Unfortunately, there is one that I know you are familiar with that has caused a wee bit of trouble in the culture from time to time. The story of Adam and Eve, as found in the book of Genesis, is the one that is most well known to us. It is very different from the other creation story in Genesis, which starts with the breath of God across a void and creation through light. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Adam and Eve because you basically probably know the general gist of the story. What is important for us to lift up here is the idea that this story is always present here in North America. It is a master story. And I use that word master on purpose. We're going to spend some time this morning looking at other creation stories, but it seemed a good opportunity to mention and to highlight some of the aspects of this master story before we dive into the other ones. This master story from the Hebrew text that has been pushed out through the culture, through Christianity, has a few interesting characteristics that are rather unique to that story. For one, it is a monotheistic story, which at the time of its writtenness, that's not a word, at the time when it was written in the ancient Near East, it was a move. It was a very specific cultural move from polytheistic culture to a monotheistic culture. So many gods to a single God. And that happened over a long span of time in the ancient Near East. So it is a mono system. And as such, it is hierarchical, right? God is at the top with a capital G, and right below God with a capital G is man with a capital M. And I'm not talking about that inclusive word. I'm talking about the M-A-N. It is binary. It is good versus evil, male versus female, up versus down. Time is linear. And it is patriarchal. Because the God of that story is male, it makes a difference, right? That God does not require, this male God does not require assistance from the feminine to reproduce. This is counter not just to most ancient Near East stories that were circulating at the time, but it's counter to most creation stories. And it's quite abiological in the sense that it does not map to the natural world as we experience it and observe it. It does not map to the world as we observe it. As my biologist would say, the beginning of life is not necessarily male or female. It's kind of mixed. But there is certainly no examples in nature, I think, where the male is the only generator of creation. So this is a very specific story. And it is a creation myth, as I said, because it tells us who God is and who humanity is and why there is evil and suffering in the world and what we are to do about it. And it is one that has caused many of us here to leave a faith community of our origin and to find and seek something new. It's a powerful story because it is a master story. But as a master story, the way that it functions is often one that encourages humans to extract and exploit the natural world. And anyone that does not sit at the top of the hierarchy is subject to harm and violence. The danger of this kind of story, this kind of master narrative, is that it is a single story that then everything else falls out of it. And it is no longer appropriate to have a single narrative in our world. We are too connected, too aware of cultural, linguistic, theological, philosophical differences. And it is incumbent upon us in the modern world to expand our capacity for understanding, not limit it by adhering to a single story. So this is the beginning of our call today to explore and to welcome in new creation myths, new maps, so to speak, for how we get from where we are to where we seek to be. And remember, no map can cover everything, right? You have to have the right map for the journey that you're on. If you want to go to Los Angeles, a map of Wisconsin from 1861 is not going to get you there. So, in that vein, enjoy these stories that we give you as other maps, other ways of thinking about how you might be in the world and how you might go from where you are to where you seek to be. So we have two stories. The first is Sky Woman, a creation story that belongs to the Haudenosaunee people of northeastern North America, including Canada. Haudenosaunee translates to the people who build a long house, or people who build a house. The Haudenosaunee are a confederation of 6 tribal communities that you may have previously understood to be the Iroquois from elementary school. They are the Haudenosaunee. Their governance structure was in fact foundational to the democratic institutions that were developed in the United States. And you may be familiar with this story and this work from Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Will Kimmerer, who is an indigenous writer, botanist, mother, and I would say complete badass. So, here is Sky Woman. The storytellers begin by calling upon those who came before, who passed the stories down to us, for we are only the messengers. In the beginning, there was the sky world. In the beginning, there was Sky Woman. And she fell like a maple seed, pirouetting on an autumn breeze. A column of light streamed from a hole in the sky world, marking her path where only darkness had been before. It took her a long time to fall. In fear, or maybe hope, she clutched a bundle tightly in her hand. Hurtling downward, she saw only dark water below. But in that emptiness, there were many eyes gazing up at the sudden shaft of light. They saw there a small object, a mere dust mote in the beam. As it grew closer, they could see that it was a woman, arms outstretched, long black hair billowing behind as she spiraled down towards them. The geese nodded at one another and rose together from the water in a wave of goose music. She felt the beat of their wings as they flew beneath to break her fall. Far from the only home she'd ever known, she caught her breath at the warm embrace of soft feathers as they gently carried her downward. And so it began. Now the geese could not hold the woman above the water for much longer, so they decided to call a council to see what to do. Resting on their wings, she saw them all gather: loons, otters, swans, beavers, fish of all kinds, and a great turtle floated in their midst and offered his back for her to rest upon. Gratefully, she stepped from the goose wings onto the dome of his shell. The others understood that she needed land for her home and discussed how they might serve her need. The deep divers among them had heard of mud at the bottom of the water and agreed to go and find some. Loon dove first, but the distance was too far, and after a long while he surfaced with nothing to show for his efforts. One by one, the other animals offered to help: otter, beaver, sturgeon, but the depth, the darkness, and the pressures were too great for even the strongest of swimmers. They returned, gasping for air with their heads ringing. Some did not return at all. Soon, only little muskrat was left, the weakest diver of all. He volunteered to go while the others looked on doubtfully. His small legs flailed as he worked his way downward, and he was gone a very, very long time. They waited and waited for him to return, fearing the worst for their relative. And before long, a stream of bubbles rose up in the small, limp body of the muskrat. He had given his life to aid this helpless human. But then the others noticed that his paw was tightly clenched, and when they opened it, there was a very small handful of mud. Turtle said, "Here, put it on my back, and I will hold it." Sky Woman then bent and spread the mud with her hands across the shell of the turtle. Moved by the extraordinary gifts of the animals, she sang in thanksgiving, and then began to dance. Her feet caressing the earth, the land grew and grew, and she danced her thanks from the dab of mud on Turtle's back until the whole earth was made. Not by Sky Woman alone, but from the alchemy of the animals' gifts, coupled with her deep gratitude. Together, they formed what we now know today as Turtle Island, our home, North America. Like any good guest, Sky Woman had not come empty-handed. The bundle was still clutched in her hand, and when she had toppled out from the sky world, she had reached out to grab onto the tree of life that grew there. In her grasp were branches, fruits and seeds of all kinds of plants, and these she scattered onto the new ground and carefully tended each one until the world turned from brown to green. Sunlight streamed through that hole from the sky world, allowing the seeds to flourish. Wild grasses, flowers, trees, and medicines spread everywhere. And now that the animals too had plenty to eat, many came to live with her on Turtle Island.
What a powerful story. So I'm going to offer a reflection. I have some thoughts about the story that I want to share, and then I have a story of my own. So we'll start with the Sky Woman story. So immediately after hearing the story, one of the things that stands out is that the animals, the loons, the fish, geese, beaver, swans, they all play host. They work to welcome the Sky Woman, and in some cases, they sacrifice their lives. Without the animals' gifts to make the Sky Woman welcome, the fall would have killed her. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. The Sky Woman and the animals also work as a collective. The geese catch the Sky Woman as a group to slow her fall. They call a council to discuss with the other animals what should be done. Animals struggle, swimming deeply for the sky woman. When the situation feels helpless, the small, weak muskrat, quite vividly, gives its life for the mud that the sky woman needs. And the turtle then offers its body for the mud. In turn, the sky woman dances and plants seed on Turtle Island. There's an exchange and a stewardship that comes from the relationship of the sky woman with her surroundings and the beings in them. It's a collaborative effort to make the world that we know. The participants of the story don't feel individually like gods. In aggregate, they do amazing things, but no one actor in the story can make a miracle in isolation. So I am a biologist by training. I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but I have been lucky enough to hear many of the most prominent minds in evolutionary biology give their thoughts on the subject. If we're verifying facts of creation stories, which I recognize is sort of a dangerous thing to do, there are more parallels with the Sky Woman story in truth than there are with Adam and Eve in truth. Evolution starts simply. It uses lots of help. There's a connectedness that is inescapable, and sacrifice is an essential part of evolutionary change. Let me say that again. Sacrifice is an essential part of evolutionary change. While we're on the subject, I want to offer one more tidbit. Biologists, as a matter of course, do not use the word create. Instead, we use other words: transcribed, formed, divided, not create, never create. The reason for this is exactly what you have in mind. The creation stories found in Genesis are so ingrained in Western thought that just the word create invokes the wrong ideas about biology. Scientific language is rigid. It can be torturous to read. It can be even more torturous to write. So maybe this isn't the bombshell that I think it is, but it is anecdotal support of my claim. The stories in Genesis are challenged by reality. I have one more piece that I want to elevate about the Sky Woman before I shift gears. I want to focus your attention on this passage that combines the alchemy of the animal's gifts with the Sky Woman's gratitude. That mixture of gifts and gratitude is essential for spreading the land. What a thing to associate with a creation story. Shouldn't we all be grateful for the world we live in? No matter how it got started, it is amazing. This place is amazing, and I'm grateful to be a part of it. It's striking that gratitude is not a more prominent notion in creation stories. Is it so scary? Is gratitude so scary? I want to switch gears. I want to tell a story that was written by Rachel Naomi Remen. Before I do, I want to share a little bit about her worldview. She's a doctor. She views medicine as a spiritual practice. It's her belief that the world is made not of facts, but of stories. What an extraordinary thing for a medical doctor to say in public. The world is made of stories and not facts. We often think of doctors as healers that harness scientific facts in order to accomplish their goals. She says that prescriptions are part of the solution, but they cannot finish the job. Without spiritual care, you're left as a husk. You need more than medicine. She teaches medical students, so she has a building in Ohio where she teaches medical students. And she tells them that they already have all the tools they need to heal people. Before they get to medical school, they have all the tools they need to heal people. And they can do it as long as they make it through school without it ruining them. She also says she's a font of wisdom, and I wasn't aware of her until this week, but I have several books to read now. She also says that every single one of our stories ends up being about the greatness and the vulnerability of being human, not the facts. If we viewed the story of Sky Woman through Dr. Rubin's lens, it's absolutely about greatness, right? It's about the greatness of being human. And I would posit that Adam and Eve's story is about the vulnerability of being human. It's interesting to me that I feel personally connected to the Sky Woman story, even though the stories of Genesis have accompanied my childhood. It feels like a shame that I haven't heard what I think is a better creation story until after such formative years have ended. This reflection turned into a compare and contrast sort of effort, and maybe you've been comparing and contrasting with me. That wasn't the task, but it felt like the thing to do. I wonder what this says about me. I wonder if I can find a place where I appreciate the lessons of each story without feeling the shame. Maybe Adam and Eve is about finding a higher state of consciousness or beauty, as the poem from Marjorie Pickthall. The story that I'm going to share with you next is about finding light. It's about healing. I'm going to come down to the front. It's not time for all ages, so I'm not going to offer pillows, but I do feel more comfortable reading a children's book from down there. So give me a moment. So this story, did you get with me, Palmer? All right. This story is called The Birthday of the World. And as I said, it was written by Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen. When I was very small, my grandfather was my favorite person in the world. He called me by a special name, Neshimala, which means little beloved soul. And he knew many, many stories. When I turned 4, he gave me a very old story called The Birthday of the World. And it goes like this. In the beginning, there was only darkness. And then a great ray of light ended the darkness, and the world was born. The world of 1,000 things. It was filled with light. Then something unexpected happened, and the light of the world broke into millions and millions of sparks of light. The sparks fell everywhere. They fell into everyone and everything. They fell into all the people, boys, girls, moms, dads, grandmas, and grandpas. They fell into all the animals, dogs and cats, guinea pigs and rabbits. They fell into all the fish in the ocean and all the birds in the sky. They fell into all the plants and all the trees and all the families. And they are still there today, hidden in everyone and everything. This is why you were born. This is why I was born and everyone was born. We were born because we can find the spark of light that is hidden in everyone and everything. We can become its friends. We can feed it, help it grow, and shine more brightly. We can help it grow so bright that it becomes visible once again, one spark at a time. But Grandpa, I asked, if the sparks of light are hidden and we cannot see them, how can we find them? Ah, Neshimala, said Grandpa, we cannot see them with our eyes. We can only see them with our hearts. Only your heart can see the spark of light that is hidden in everyone and everything. When we are kind to people or listen to them or believe in them or love them or help them realize their deepest dreams, we help their spark grow brighter and brighter until our light shines out, or their light shines out and fills up the world again, one spark at a time. And when it does, your own spark grows bigger and shines brighter and brighter. So the world isn't broken, Grandpa. The light is still there. My grandfather smiled fondly at me. Yes, Neshimala, the light is hidden, but the light is still there. It will always be there, and that changes everything. This is the story of the birthday of the world. It was given to me, and now I give it to you. It is not just my story. It is your story, too. One spark at a time, we can fill the world back to the way it was at the beginning, whole and filled with light. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Court. So the birthday of the world story comes from the Tikkun Olam series of stories in the Hebrew text. It is a sacred and mystical story about what humans are called to do. And while this story is more focused on the light, the full part of that tradition also speaks to why we struggle and why there is suffering in the world, and that our role as humanity is to find those pieces of light and to connect them to one another. And within that idea is the idea that when we are faced with suffering in our own lives, in the lives of our community and across the world, that the call is to turn towards suffering, not away. Which is, I think, the hardest bit of work to do as humanity. To turn towards suffering, to turn towards desolation, destruction, and loss, and to stand in the midst of it and still find light. Both this story and the Sky Woman's story speak of a world that is highly complex, where good and evil are mixed in this story, just as they are mixed in the Adam and Eve story. In none of these stories is humanity perfect, right? But each of these stories gives us something to hold on to. Perhaps you are right that Adam and Eve is about the seeking of wisdom. And Turtle Woman is about the rooting down, literally, into gratitude and gift giving. And the Sky World is to remind us to find the light in all. We are part of creation wholly in different ways in these stories. And I imagine one of the questions that is in your heart is, well, what are we supposed to do about this master story that still lives and thrives underneath us? And I think the answer is in the birthday story, to seek the points of light and to connect them to one another, to seek out the other stories and connect them, creation upon creation upon creation. And to understand that creation stories, as Court said, are not about biology. They're about wisdom, about how we are called to be in the world. And to notice when a creation myth has gotten out of bounds, when it has moved from telling us about what love and justice might look like into something that causes harm and trauma in the people. I would say today and now is as good a time as it ever was to write some new narratives for humanity. Some new narratives that can take us from where we are, a world that is struggling with massive inequality, political upheaval, climate disruption, and endless war, to a place wherein we have not just what it takes to survive, but to thrive in the midst of these challenges, to connect with one another with courage, resilience, hope, Faith, where's my jar? Did I leave it? Oh, my jar's not here, darn it. That jar we've been creating the last few weeks. It's behind me. Oh, well, that's a different jar, but this is a jar of light, so that will work too. This jar, which represents the other jar, it's a growing metaphor, which is full of courage, resilience, faith, hope, love, a sense of humor, joyful sex, deep and long, enduring, ridiculously flawed human beings all mixed up together, seeking the light within. And so as we come to the close of this storytelling moment, I invite you to sit down a little deeper in your chair, maybe settle your feet in, close your eyes if you want to, and just breathe. Your task, my friends, in this community is to pay attention to the stories that are written across and in your bodies, and to do the hard work of seeing the stories for what they are and what they are not, to see their gifts as well as their limitations. Every metaphor stretched too far will always break. And when you do this, maybe you will discover that those stories, those ones that wake you up in the night with your heart beating fast, are not, in fact, monsters under your bed. But they are just stories among many other stories, and their proper place is on this shelf with the other stories, so that you are ultimately free to take down the stories as you wish and read them when you are in need of a little guidance and a rest at the end of your day. And if you don't have enough stories in your home, maybe visit your local library or our library downstairs, or a storytelling circle here in town, or King's English, or Under the Rainbow, and see what else is available. What other stories are ready and available to guide you on this next phase of your journey, individually and as a whole community. And this writer, thinker, and minister thinks the more books you have, the better off you are. Amen.
Please stand if you're able. Hymn number 1053, please.
Standing for the extinguishing of our chalice. Let us extinguish our chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, or the energy of action. We hold each other in our hearts until we meet again. And as you are seated, receive this benediction. I invite you as you go forth, remember the maps of old. You know, the ones on that yellowed paper with the dragons and the sea monsters, the mermaids and the whales, the ones warning of danger, of falling off the edge of the map, telling of lands undiscovered. Those maps remain useful and correct because adventure awaits the curious and wide-eyed explorer. And I hope that you will again and again and again fall off the edges of your map and discover that forevermore, Turtle will hold you up. Travel wisely and well, my friends. May you be well and may you receive this blessing of our postlude. And I would like for you today to practice not clapping at the end, but to just hold that goodness in your heart. And then join us for the potluck downstairs.
Where are you now when darkness seems to win? Where are you now when the world is crumbling? Oh, I hear you say, I hear you say, look up, child. Hey, look up, child. Hey, where are you now when all I feel is doubt? Child, hey, look up, child, hey, look up, child, hey, look up, child, hey, look up. You're not threatened by the war, you're not shaken by the storm. I know even in our suffering, even when I can't be seen, I know you're in control. Oh, I hear you say, I hear you say, look up, child.